Yeah, here we go now, baby. Right back into the action for another day of the week. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Before You Bet Aaron Live right now on the Covers YouTube and X channels. Great big show planned for you guys today. It's a great big day in Major League Baseball. 4 playoff games. We have best bets for all of those games. Also discussing what we've seen so far in the Major League Baseball playoffs. And we'll be having our weekly conversation with Jon Middlekauff. A lot to cover in the world of the NFL, the fallout of the Robert Saleh firing, John's favorite picks here for week 6. And we will be wrapping up this show with our continued look at NBA futures. The season starts in less than 2 weeks from now. We are proudly presented by BetMGM. Make sure you check them out for all your sports betting needs. And if you guys want to participate in the show, very easy to do so. Hit up that live chat on YouTube, on X. Let us know what you're betting today in Major League Baseball. Let us know what you like in week 6 of the NFL season. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe button right down there. A lot of great content here on the Covers YouTube channel covering everything that there is to cover in the world of sports betting. And you don't want to miss any of it. Okay, so a big Jon show today. Jon Metler for MLB and NBA and Jon Middlekauff for the NFL in the middle of that. So let's go to the first Jon Metler. Why aren't you wearing your Lion or your Tigers hat today here, man? What's going on?
Being professional, you got to rep the brand, unbiased, but obviously I'm rooting for the Tigers. Can't wait for 3:00. I'm sure my Instagram stories pretty soon of all my friends is going to be people getting hammered in downtown Detroit. So it'll be a good time there. That place is going to be, you think San Diego was loud? I imagine Comerica Park was going to be pretty loud today as well.
Yeah, that place is buzzing. A lot of people using their vacation days up today to watch the Tigers, hopefully for their sake, be able to win a game. So I think this is the last day of the entire Major League Baseball season where there's going to be 4 games. It's going to be just 2s and 1s the rest of the way here. So we're going to lead with Major League Baseball today. I have a bet for every game. I went 1-1 last night. Walker Buehler got lucky on that one, went over his outs recorded number despite allowing 6 earned runs in that game. The Dodgers on the brink, not looking too good for them. Not looking too good here for the Phillies either. The Mets and Padres can both move on here tonight. It's hard not to like either of them to do that. No excuses for the Dodgers, though. Okay, Jon, what do you say? We get right into the action here. Let's rip through these bets for the Major League Baseball action here tonight and today, actually. And let's start with that day game. Alex Cobb on the mound here for the Guardians. He hasn't pitched in over a month. I'm not scared, though. I'm going to go under 1.5 earned runs for him. The big theme of this bet is because I don't expect him to be out there for very long. First of all, he hasn't pitched in over a month, and I think this could be a version, maybe a modified bullpen game for Cleveland here. This bullpen is elite. They are fresh. They had the day off there yesterday, so I don't think we're going to see Cobb go. He might not even go more than 3 innings in this one. I think he had a total outs number of 11.5. For what it's worth now, he hasn't pitched in over a month. But what we've seen out of him this year, it's a very small sample size. It's been pretty good, though. Last time we saw him, it was about a month ago against Pittsburgh. He carried a perfect game into the 7th inning there. And let's not pretend like the Tigers are absolutely on fire here at the plate. A 645 OPS in the playoffs for them so far. So we'll take Cobb to keep it relatively clean. Should be a pretty short outing for him. So 1.5 earned runs. We'll take the under on that. Jon has a home run bet for this game. A 10-1 home run prop. What are we looking at?
I'm going with Parker Meadows. I said I'd remain unbiased, and I give the first bet to Tigers home run prop. But I'm going to go with Parker Meadows just because when you look at this Tigers lineup, there is issues with pinch hit risk across multiple guys. And honestly, your best guy to hit a home run is Kerry Carpenter, but he's also the best chance of coming out for a pinch hit. So it's kind of hard when you're playing home run props on him. The one thing you do like, Alex Cobb, right-handed pitcher. This moves Parker Meadows back up to the top of the lineup. He's batting leadoff, so he could steal like an extra at-bat out of that. He hasn't hit for much power in this series. He has a couple, I think 2 singles he's got in the series. One thing you do like is he's a really good defender. He made a big play in the last game, kind of maybe definitely overshadowed because Quan makes the big catch. But he falls up the next inning and he goes against the wall and makes it look easy because he's a 6'5" center fielder. But that confidence, that confidence just from like playing really good defense and then winning that game. And then you're giving me 10-1. 10-1's a big number for a guy who has really big power. And like the guy says in their chat, he swings for the fences. Like when this guy connects, he doesn't have a lot of home runs in his career because his career hasn't been very long. So I think this number is sitting at such a long price because of that. But if you watch him play day in, day out, he swings for the fences, and it's 10-1. There's a big probability gap when I was looking at the projections, and the wind's blowing out 11 miles per hour at Comerica Park. Not normal. Usually it is blowing in. So you have that behind you as well. It's nice and sunny out too.
Okay, next up, let's move to Mets, Phillies. I think the Mets are probably going to move on here. The Phillies aren't very clutch, but my best bet it is in support of the Mets. We're going to support their starting pitcher, Jose Quintana. Going to go under 2.5 earned runs for him. He is in elite form. This is probably some of the best form he's been in his entire career. And this guy's been around here for a while. A .64 ERA. By the way, we're going to go under 2.5 earned runs, but a .64 ERA for him over his last 7 starts. This includes allowing 0 earned runs over 6 innings versus the Brewers in the wild card run. It also includes 7 innings versus the Phillies a month ago. Didn't allow a single run in that game, just 3 hits allowed. He's got a really good track record in the playoffs. He's made 6 total starts in his career in the playoffs. 4 separate times he allowed 0 earned runs in those starts. And pretty good success against this Phillies lineup here. Pretty big sample size here. 191 combined at-bats for them. A 645 OPS. And the Phillies, they get up to the plate, man. They're just not very clutch here in this series. Going back to the last few games in the NLCS last year. Kind of coming up short there, Philadelphia. So we'll see if the Money Mets can punch their ticket to the NLCS here tonight. You like one of their players to hit a home run. Tell us about it, John.
Yeah, I went Francisco Lindor. If you didn't see the video on X, great video. Grimace getting on the train and all the Mets fans going crazy with him. I think it's the funniest thing. When you flip to playoffs, like in my mind, it's big in the NBA. And you know, there's obviously like projections and math behind betting. But when you flip to the playoffs, there's like matchups and like energy. And there's certain things that I just don't think math can grab. There is still an edge. You still always want that in your favor. It's not as big as you might expect. Like I think the projection on this was like plus 405 and this is sitting at plus 475. But when you just look at this Mets team and you're like, I can establish some form of an edge on their best player to hit a home run in this ballpark against their rival with a chance to knock them out, I'm going to hit the button. And the one thing I do like about this is, you know, Ranger Suarez lefty. Lindor has a home run off him in his past in his career. Probably a quick hook, right? If anything goes wrong, you're facing elimination. At least Lindor's a switch hitter, OPS above 800, both lefties and righties. So if they start playing matchup games, you know, you're not too concerned about like losing your edge on like the matchup versus the pitcher there because he can go both ways. So that'd be something like, you know, when I was talking about the Tigers there, Kerry Carpenter, you might really like that he's left-handed batter versus right-handed pitcher, but he could get lifted, right? Or they can bring a lefty and really choke that off from him. So you're not too worried about that with Lindor. I hit the button on the plus 475, small edge, but the vibes are really, really high with the Mets. So I'm going to roll with it.
All right, next up, we are off to Kansas City. Yankees, Royals all knotted up at 1. Dare I say a must-win game for the New York Yankees here tonight. They do not want to go down in the series. You guys have heard me say it. I'll sound like a broken record once again. The Yankees, when they get into these playoffs, they feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. And if they lose and they go down to a truly must-win situation, they're going to be in trouble here. So the Yankees have got to come up big tonight. I don't know, man. This is the game I had the hardest time coming up with a bet for, but one that I do like. A little bit of a buy low spot. I think Bobby Witt Jr. over 1.5 total bases, plus 100 odds on this one. So this one's all about him hitting at home. And the Yankees don't exactly have an ace on the mound here in Clark Schmidt. So Bobby Witt Jr. at home, he is truly elite. He had a .382 batting average in Kansas City this season. He led Major League Baseball in extra base hits at home during the regular season where he had 54. Might just take one. Hopefully he can get up and hit a double in his first at-bat of the game here. And here's the thing. Yes, you look at the game logs and you're like, really, Joe? You want to take back Bobby Witt here? It's a buy low spot. And here's the thing. He hasn't hit at home in a while. The Royals have played 9 straight games on the road now. So I think getting back on his home field in Kansas City, I think will be a good spot for him here tonight. Bobby Witt snaps a cold streak tonight as well. Love it. Plus some warm weather today. South wind. Let's go Bobby Witt. Let's crack a double right off the bat in the first inning for us. Okay. Speaking of teams with pressure on them, the LA Dodgers, man. The Padres have there's no excuse for the Padres not to win this game tonight. Yeah. It's basically a bullpen game for the Dodgers. And hey, they knew they were going to be in this situation. I do not want to hear any excuses from the LA Dodgers. They're paying all these guys $1 zillion. If they lose this series after the flop last year, the flop the year before that, it sets up pretty good here for the Padres. They're buzzing at the plate. They're on their home field. So we shall see. But we each have a bet for this game. You have a home run. I have a prop play. Tell us about who you think is going yard here for the Padres.
So I went with Jerks and Profar, and it really was because of the price point. So when I was going around, BetMGM had plus 750, and every other sportsbook had about plus 550. That's like noticeable. Just like if you didn't look at anything else, that's very noticeable. To have someone $2 higher than the rest of the market kind of draws your attention in. You know, he hasn't hit a home run in this series. Obviously, Fernando Tatis Jr. has hit a bunch. The Padres themselves have all hit a bunch. But like you look at the pricing, right? Tatis, I think, is like plus 300. This is plus 750. So you're getting much bigger payout for Profar to hit this. While he hasn't hit a home run, he's still doing damage in the series. 3 hits, 3 walks. Like he's doing things with the bat. It's not like he's like ice cold or anything like that. And kind of like what I pointed out with Lindor, when you move into the baseball playoffs, obviously they're really quick to like pull the hook on like the matchup you might be attacking, bring in a reliever specifically for a batter or something like that. Profar, once again, this is a bullpen game for the Dodgers. So you're going to see lots of different arms. So you don't really know who you're going against from a starting pitcher standpoint. I do think Cardi and Jingles are saying Landon Knack might start the game, but you don't really know like what relievers coming, what relievers going in and out. So the fact that he's a switch hitter, same thing as Lindor, 800 OPS, both left and right side of the plate, kind of makes you feel like you're protected and there's an opportunity to attack this price point with not really knowing who the starting pitcher or who the bulk of the pitching will come from.
Okay, my best bet for this game might be the final game of the season here for the Dodgers, but I do think they're going to be able to score some runs here. I'm going to go over 3.5 on their team total, minus 115. So Dylan Cease on the man here for the Padres, and he got crushed in game 1 of this series. The Dodgers scored 5 runs against him in 3.1 innings of work. LA faced him back on September 25th as well. They scored 3 runs against him. And I think 5 innings of work in that one. And yes, these are recency bias, small sample size, whatever you want to call it. But pull back, take a look at the bigger sample size. They have a pretty good history of absolutely crushing him in 808 OPS and 100 combined at-bats. Freddie Freeman and Ohtani specifically have been really good against Dylan Cease in their careers. And can the Dodgers, this team with all this talent, can they really be this toothless once again? In the playoffs, we saw the flop last year. We saw the flop the year before that against the Padres. It's all on their offense tonight. The offense has to show up. It's a bullpen game. Maybe they can get a couple good innings out of a couple guys. But like I said, they're paying Ohtani, Betts, Freddie Freeman. Those guys must be making easily $1 billion combined if you put together all their no excuses here, guys. You got to show it. The Dodgers have been favorites to win the World Series all damn season long, right up until probably a couple nights ago, same as the season before. Show a little bit of guts here, guys. Show up. Yeah, I know, like JPC4 says they are armless. That is the truth. It is a bullpen game. It's on the offense to show up. They have the potential on any given night to go out there and score 7-8 runs. Can you do it when it really matters? It's so easy for this team, the Dodgers, to, the Colorado Rockies are coming to town in the middle of June. Okay, they're going to beat the shit out of them. The Miami, these dinky little teams. But when it matters most, you got to show up here, guys. And, we saw last year with Betts and Freeman, they absolutely flopped. I don't think Ohtani's a flopper. Now, he hasn't done much the last 2 games, but we saw him in the World Baseball Classic hitting and pitching. He was absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, I think Ohtani, I saw him at around plus 285 to hit a home run tonight. I don't mind that bet. I think he has 2 or 3 against Dylan Cease here in his career. So, yeah, Ohtani, you got to set the tone here, guys. Do you think? Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think the Dodgers have been they've been really, really good for so long, but could you argue it's like one of the more disappointing runs, even though it's had so much success, but not have success? You know what I mean?
Oh, it's a tremendous disappointment, really. It's kind of like if you compare it to something like people will like Aaron Rodgers. It's like he's a great quarterback, but he hasn't won a Super Bowl in forever. He always has these great regular seasons. You can kind of say the same thing about like a Lamar Jackson, like if you wanted to compare it to players. But the Dodgers, they spend all that money. They're going to get their 100 wins. They're going to finish in first place in the NL West. Then when it gets to the playoffs, they come up short. And yes, they did win in 2020. I don't think it's fair that people, it's a COVID. It didn't really count. It was only a 45-game regular season. I don't think it's fair that people criticize them. And the Lakers won the bubble. Every team was playing under the same rules, and they won that year. But people will make excuses. Glasnow, Stone, injured. They've known that these guys have been injured here for a while. They knew that this was a situation that they're going to be in where perhaps they have to do pitching chaos a la Detroit Tigers here. No excuses, Dodgers. I do not want to hear it. So two teams can move on here tonight. Do you think both teams punch their ticket here? The Padres and Mets, John?
It's pretty interesting, right? Because all four teams that got a bye are kind of up against it a little bit here, right? Like even like the Guardians, not to make it about the Tigers, but they almost need to win these two games. You don't want to go back game 5 and face Skubal. Like a split's not even necessarily good enough.
Yeah.
Royals, again, really good starting pitching. They're back at home. They got the split. Do both teams move on? I feel like the Padres and Dodgers, they always give max drama, so they'll probably go game 5. I feel like the Mets close it out. I feel like the Mets win this.
Yeah, we've kicked this around a bit. I think they're going to – if the Yankees and Dodgers both lose in this round, I guarantee you they will be changing the playoff format at the very least. And I agree with this. I think this round should be 7 games. Because usually they would say, remember in the NBA, the first round used to be 5 games, and then they changed it to 7. I don't know if that was because there were so many upsets. There wasn't a lot of them, but there was a few. Usually the best team will win a 7-game series, right? So
there's also way too many off days. Like if they're baseball, we play every single day. There's so many off days. The Tigers got to pitch Skubal in game 2, and he's going to get full rest and go game 5. Like that's the Guardians should have a bigger advantage than the Tigers shouldn't be able to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the ideal format maybe, because you don't want to limit the amount of teams getting into the playoffs. Maybe you do the best 4 teams or the division winners automatically get through to the divisional round and some type of a mini tournament, maybe for like a wild card thing, almost like a 1-game series. I think maybe they do it in the same location, make a little bit of a party out of it or something like that. I think that could be something cool. But yeah, this series should be 7 rounds for sure. Okay. More Major League Baseball talk on the show tomorrow. We're going to have a lot to discuss. More NBA talk with John coming up here momentarily. John, give us a couple minutes here because yesterday we interviewed John Middlekauff. We need to pre-record with him due to some travel. We're going to be talking all things NFL. So let's throw to that interview right now. Sit tight, John. It is now time for our weekly conversation with former NFL scatter guy down in Arizona. Let's bring in Jon Middlekauff. John, how are we making out?
What a day. You can never be shocked. Obviously just in sports in general with trades and firings. But they do sometimes come, it's not unexpected because you talk about certain things that are out there in the ether. But when it actually happens, if you're not prepared, especially, bright and early in the morning for us out on the West Coast on a Tuesday, you're like, whoa. So it's not shocking that, like, if you just say out loud, Robert Saleh got fired when the season started, people would be like, yeah, I can see that. But when it actually happens, it is kind of jaw-dropping, isn't it?
Yeah, so what's the deal here? The Jets are doing this, obviously. They probably want to get some sort of spark. They don't want to throw in the towel. It's way too early to throw in the towel on the season. But 5 weeks in is a little surprising. Are you surprised by the earliness of it? And ultimately, do you think it's a good decision?
Well, I think there's so many angles to this, right? If you just remove any emotion to like, was it good or bad? Like Robert Saleh has been bad. Right. Mm-hmm. Robert Saleh has been a bad head coach. He's 20-36. Rodgers, Zach Wilson, Mike White, doesn't matter. He just stands there on the sideline, not sure what he's doing, doesn't do it well. It's like, okay, he's a CEO head coach. I bet he's Rico Suave in the press conferences. Well, actually, it's not even just Rodgers. Remember last year was Zach Wilson. He would say things, then he'd have to go back on it. Looked like a guy in over his head, which is understandable. Most coordinators, when they become head coaches, fail and utterly fail. Now, most people that go to the Jets fail. So ultimately, it's like, does it matter? That'd be my thing with the Jets. Does it matter? Because they feel like a very, very poor run organization. And for example, the Bucs kind of were too. But then they hired Bruce Arians, whose good buddy that he coached from Temple in, I think, the early 80s was Todd Bowles. So they showed up, and then it's like Tom becomes available, and it's like, okay, we know what we're doing. Bruce Arians had saved the Arizona Cardinals like a decade before. Todd Bowles had already established himself as the best defensive coordinator. Then they got Tom, like the Jets, had good players on the roster. Boom. They're just good, right? The Jets, some similarities, some good players on the roster, but their coaching staff stinks. So it's like you bring Aaron Rodgers, who is old, and now he's, banged up. It's like he's not – it's like they're trying to put a Band-Aid over a bullet hole, and Aaron Rodgers is like Tom Brady was a strong enough Band-Aid. Aaron Rodgers at this point just simply is not good enough.
Now, we all get the sense that Rodgers runs this organization, so pretty fair to assume that he was consulted, correct?
Well, you would think. I mean, I think it's fair to assume that he's not a big believer in Robert Saleh, right? I mean, just their dust-ups would be strong because they're not like – it's like in the Aaron Rodgers passive-aggressive way. But in terms of the things that are said at the podium – and if you're Saleh, you probably don't love him because he forces you to take Hackett as the offensive coordinator. So it's a bizarre situation. And when people don't know what they're doing and you get Rodgers, like if this is a relationship of celebrities, Rodgers is the really famous one and everyone else is kind of irrelevant. Like the thing with Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles, like they could butt heads a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like Bruce Arians give it right. And sometimes Tom was ultimately right. Like we got to change the offense a little bit. But they were also listening. Oh, so you want to bring in Gronk? You want to do this? Okay, we'll bring in Antonio Brown, but he's gone now. And like they would draw, like it felt like the side of the coaches with Saleh and Joe Douglas. Like Rodgers can tell that it's not a balance, and that's not how football. This is not the NBA. Like LeBron doesn't just in the NBA he gets to do whatever he wants. In football, I guess you could do that if you were such a great player, but he's not. And even the greatest players, like he didn't get to do that in Green Bay. Mahomes doesn't get to do that with Andy, and it works. That's part of it's like a militaristic hierarchy in the sport of football, and it usually starts with the coach. That's the thing, and it's a weird spot for the GM. But the GM, once the season starts, he's not picking the plays, and like his hands-on ability is not as crazy. Like the coach has so much juice, so when it gets all out of whack, like. If you told me right now the Jets end up winning 6 games, I'd believe you. Like I think it could get even worse. Don't you?
Yeah, they have a really tough schedule coming up. They got the Bills on deck. The Bills are going to be hungry for a win after blowing that one on Sunday down in Houston. They have the Steelers on deck as well. They have the Houston Texans. I know they got the Patriots in the mix as well. But yeah, this team's in trouble. They can't run the football. Either their true problems come on the offensive side of the football. That's the irony of all this, I guess. Right?
Well, I'm not a huge fantasy player. Obviously, I follow it close enough to like know the main topics. All I heard was Breece Hall's the next, Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson, Walter Payton. I mean, this guy was so hyped, and you watch him play, you're like, it was the backup better? And it can't just be the O line. Well, I think the O line's been fine. He got, and this happens sometimes, the hype. I said this the other day. Sauce is a good player. Like he's starter on every team in the league. But the hype started getting to like, is this guy like a tall Deion Sanders? Like, no, guys. He's a really good corner. Relative to most corners in the NFL, he's better. But he's not the best corner in the league. And his skill set, he's a longer, stiffer, more physical corner. He's not Mr. Just lock up everybody. Justin Jefferson, obviously, is a great player, was getting open with ease against him. Just like any good, a Devontae Adams in his prime, the Brandon Ayuk, like the route runner types, he is not going to be able to just mirror. Or Surtain can do everything Sauce can do, but he can also chase you around the field. That's what makes the prime times, the Revises, like the all-time great corners. So it's like, I think sometimes the Jets, and maybe this is because of New York, gets a little overhyped. So their team, like Quinn Williams, star. Some of the other guys, to me, Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner, really good players.
Yeah.
But we talk about them like they're going to the Hall of Fame or something.
High drama in New York. It never ends with the Jets. And
What's the line? I didn't look this morning. The line on the Bills game, because if you are out on the Jets, I would imagine it's like 4 or 5 because it's in New York. My guess is Bills
-2.5.
-3. Yeah,
2.5 for the Bills.
If you don't believe in Rodgers and the Jets, you could argue of all the games this weekend, bet the farm on the Bills in that spot. Assuming Josh Allen, might have been KO'd. Everything's good with him, right?
Yeah, we'll have to wait there. The weakness of the Bills' defense is against the run, and I don't know if the Jets are going to be able to exploit that. So
they don't even want to. Rodgers just wants to throw back shoulder fades like it's 2015.
Okay, enough Jets talk for now. I'm sure we'll be talking plenty of them as the season goes on. Let's turn the page to something kind of more fun, entertaining, quarterback talk. Really going to start to ramp up here for the 2025 NFL draft. We're at the point of the season here in the NFL. Pretty easy to identify which teams will be in the market to start over at the quarterback position here in the offseason. You have the obvious ones like the Raiders, the Titans, maybe the Cleveland Browns, probably the Panthers. And you have some more unique situations. Maybe the Rams. Stafford's getting a little bit older. Maybe McVay's a little bit curious about drafting a guy for the first time. Tua and the Dolphins, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. So it looks like there's a pretty good crop of young quarterbacks who will be entering the 2025 draft. Who's your number one guy?
To me, it's a pretty close race between Shedeur and Cam Ward. I think when you factor in the total package of athleticism, playmaking, arm strength, Cam is playing or has played because he's been in the Pac-12 for 2 years at Washington State, now at Miami in bigger games. But with Colorado being 4-1, and now they go on a big time stretch, they're coming off a bye this week at, I think K-State comes to them. They might go to K-State, might be screwing that up, but they play all the good teams, Utah, Oklahoma State. Like, he's going to be playing in a lot of games where people are watching. I do think that Shedeur can end up as the number one pick. But for me, those two guys, Quinn Ewers after the Michigan game looked obviously like a number one pick. I do think it's pretty concerning that back-to-back seasons he just gets hurt and misses games.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, to take a guy number one overall is hard no matter what. Like, there's a lot of unknowns. But, like, you have tangible data, like this guy misses games. And this last injury was kind of it's just kind of a weird deal. It just makes you nervous because you watch that Michigan game, who turns out they're not very good. I mean, they just got kind of killed by Washington. They lost by 10 points, which I had a little money on Michigan on that one. Learned my lesson. If you can't throw a forward pass, probably stay away from that team.
Yeah.
But, Quinn Ewers in that game alone obviously lit up NFL scouts, like text messaging their GM and their coaching staff. But I think those other two guys, I mean, Cam Ward just on Saturday night, I stayed up late to watch that thing. He was a big reason they were down too, but he's got kind of some special qualities. Him and Shedeur they got a lot going for him. So if I was a betting man, it'd be one of those two guys. And from what I've seen, I mean, I like them both a lot.
Okay, so one team that might be in the market for a new starting quarterback here is the Cleveland Browns. Check out what they've done so far this season. 15.8 points per game, dead last in yards per play, dead last in yards per pass attempt. Deshaun Watson, 28th in quarterback rating, narrowly edging out Jacoby Brissett and Will Levis. He still hasn't thrown for 200 yards in a game this season, and he has absolutely stunk since the moment he arrived here in Cleveland. So why are they sticking with him as a starting quarterback? Is it simply a matter of them not wanting to throw in the towel and pretty much admitting defeat? Like, yes, this was one of the worst transactions in the history of the NFL.
Well, I think it all goes back to last year they made the playoffs, and they did it because they had the comeback player of the year. And then within the last couple of weeks, as Flacco's come back on the scene and throwing touchdowns left and right, I think he's got 5 touchdowns in 2 weeks. He said they never called him. And he said it multiple places. Like, they never picked up the phone. So if you were serious about winning, even if you traded and paid Deshaun all that money, he was injured. So he was a guy, he couldn't even practice all off season. Clearly your team and Joe Flacco worked. And I totally get it. Like, the 49ers wanted to keep Sam Darnold. but they could only pay him $2 or $3 million. Minnesota offers him 10. Godspeed. They didn't even call him. Why didn't they call him? Well, because they knew what would happen. Imagine if Joe Flacco was on the team right now. The fan base would be, it's obviously, I'm sure, if you live in Ohio, very negative, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But the only topic you'd be saying is like, if we're going to boycott, there's going to be a mutiny. And it honestly would start with the team. So, like, I give them credit for avoiding this situation, which was clear to happen because I think they were told by the owner. And this they signed that money, and this is the Jets. Look at the Jets. They're in the situation. Coach fired. Rodgers is all out of whack. The Raiders trade for Devontae, all out of whack. Well, where'd those two guys come from? Like a first-class organization that where are the Packers going to be at the end of the year? Probably in the playoffs because that's where they typically always are. Yeah. And those guys, you go to the Browns, like all I heard this out, they're so good, so much talent. Like a lot of teams have. This isn't college football, where it's like the Browns like this is the Browns. And the reason they're in this situation, why? Crappy ownership. Who gave this guy $230? He didn't want to even come there.
No,
now,
he wants to go to a dome team or stay in the South.
Exactly. He's way worse, obviously, than the guy everyone thought they were trading for. But like, why was he available? Right? I mean, it's like, isn't that a pretty big red flag? Do you know the crazy thing is? If they cut him tomorrow, which they're not going to do, but let's just say they cut him tomorrow, I don't think he'd ever play in the NFL again.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because he's so bad just as a player, it's like bad enough. And then when you factor in the off the field stuff, I mean, it's so bad when you combine them both. It doesn't get any worse. So it's like, wait, objectively worst player in the league, who's also now old and made a lot of money. So it's not like one of those young Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson, like young good guy. Just there's still a lot to work with.
Yeah.
And off the field, no one would want to touch. You never say never. I think he would definitely, if they cut him tomorrow, I don't think we would see him at 100% this year. No, he wouldn't be he'd be out of the league for the year.
I think he's toast. I saw a tweet before we came on here that says
like forever. Like, are you in agreement? Like he'd just be gone.
Oh yeah. Like my big thing is when they brought him into Cleveland, they gave him all that money. They traded all the assets. Is when you bring in a guy to be your starting quarterback and you're giving him all of that, you want him to be the face of the franchise. You want him on the billboards. You want little kids walking around wearing his jersey. You want him throwing out the first pitch at the Major League Baseball game. You could not do that with Deshaun Watson. You could not parade him around. So I'm not shocked to see that this happened. I saw a tweet before we came on that he has more settled lawsuits than touchdown passes since arriving in Cleveland. So that, that's going to set that franchise back. Just an absolute disaster.
Think about this. Like I just saw Kyler make a bunch of awesome plays against the Niners. And if I still play video games, if I was a younger kid, like the Cardinals would probably be a really fun team to be a video game. And he had some question marks, but when you really think about the question marks, it was like, yeah, he likes to play video games a lot. He doesn't focus. Which if that's the worst thing, it's like, okay, we just get a little older, a little more mature. You got to put in a little more effort. But it's never, to me, when you start factoring in like lawsuits in the under the categories in which his lawsuits are under, I think in this day and age, he's simply not good enough. Like he was of the mold of, I'm not saying he specifically was these players, but Lamar, Kyler, Russell in Seattle. And you watch him now, he's like, he looks slow, no pop in his arm. Obviously, he just kind of like spins around, scrambling around, and just constantly runs into guys. It's like, this is a putrid player. It's a type player that it's impossible to function with because he's never really been a pocket quarterback. And then his athleticism, he seems slower and probably less confident, and it's just completely unraveled. And the vibe of the team is like, we can't stand this guy. That's because it's just human nature, right? Money's all relative. If you work for someone and you're a great employee and you make $100,000, and then this dude that like isn't good at his job, who's got a lot going on publicly, everyone in the office kind of resents, is making like $5 million. Like all the dudes making $100,000 working their ass off start looking at this guy like, this is crazy. It's just human nature. Even if you initially like the guy, you're like, hey, he's not bad. After a while, you're like, this is nuts.
Yeah, that's what they get for signing up for the Deshaun Watson business. So ugly scene there in Cleveland. Let's talk a couple games here this week. Kind of an intriguing matchup on Thursday night. 49ers
Good
in
game.
Seattle taking on the Seahawks. Yeah, concerns for both teams here. You check out the body work of the 49ers so far this season. Their only wins are at home versus the Jets and the Patriots. Meanwhile, we've seen them kind of collapse versus the Rams and the Cardinals.
Kind of.
Yeah, just no points scored in the second half there versus the Cardinals. Then we check out the Seahawks. This is a team that's starting to get exposed, in my opinion. Great start versus Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. Then their defense gets blown out of the water in Detroit, and they lose as a favorite at home to the New York Giants. We have the 49ers favored by 3.5. I kind of like the over on the total of 47.5. What do you make of the matchup here?
Well, it's must win for the 49ers. After that, it would have been a huge game for them, regardless what happened on Sunday. But it's way more important now. You can't lose a game when you're up 23-10. But like you said, they did blow 2 divisional games, which were awful, where they had huge leads in the second half. It is Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford, who on any given day can beat anybody. And if you screw up, which the Niners the other day, I mean, multiple tip picks, a fumble, their kicker was injured, and Kyler just turned into the guy that we just talked about. Like, you would have no problem buying the jersey for your son because he's an electric player, and he's always given the Niners fits. And I think the Niners, if you factor in the playoff game, because if you remember 2 years ago, they played Seattle in the first round, so they played them 5 times in 2 years. Now, obviously, with Pete Carroll, but against Geno Smith, they have not lost. So Kyler and Matt Stafford, I think we all agree, are a little different animal than Geno, even though Geno a couple Monday nights ago looked, I might have been like his best game as a pro. He looked incredible. But it's a big difference. Now, those defensive guys, I think, did they get Leonard Williams back last week, but Murphy's still out. We'll have to see. It's always hard during this short week, like who's able to play, who's not. Sometimes you almost take a deep breath and try to save, or did they save on Sunday to try to hope them for this game? It'll be some last minute decisions, but 49ers, you can't. Seattle beat you. The Niners would have lost all 3 divisional games, right? Two of them, I guess one was in LA, which is basically a home game for the Niners. 1 at home.
Yeah.
You'd be 0-3. Seattle would be 4-2. You'd be 2-4. It'd be major because the NFC looks pretty terrible. I think they're going to be a 9-win team, maybe 2 as wild cards. It doesn't end your season, but it would put a pretty big damper early. And I also think you beat Seattle. Like you said, it kind of makes them look in the mirror like, God, maybe we're not as good as we thought. And they're a team that, listen, Geno is an excellent bridge quarterback. Like you see the versions of, Andy Dalton starts to get exposed the more he plays. Minshew's just not good enough to start more than like 2 games in a row. Geno's a real starting quarterback, but he's a real like somewhere like 15-20. And it's just hard to beat teams on a consistent basis when that, like, you have to have a lot of things going right for you. And I think that just comes out sometimes the more and more they play with Geno. It's like everyone thinks like, oh, this is the year they're going to win 12 or 13. No, it's like, listen, their flaws might change. Like Mike McDonald might improve some things that Pete was bad at. But when Geno's when you're starting quarterback, you're an 8-10 win team.
Okay, let's talk Lions, Cowboys. Good looking game in the late afternoon slate there on Sunday. We have the Lions. They look to be back in top form here offensively, coming off their bye. They're favored by 3 points in this one, tied for the highest total of the week, 52.5 points. Now, these teams met in Dallas last season. We were expecting a shoot on that one. I think it was a Saturday night game. We recall it was 20-19 Dallas win, a very controversial ending to that one. Now, weird season for Dallas here. They've got a manhandled in their 2 games at home. They're typically a lot better on their home field, but they got steamrolled by the Saints. The Ravens beat them fairly easily. They have limped to a couple of wins on the road. But what do we make of the Lions? It was a bit of not very inspiring start to the season for them, but maybe they are back in top form here after that win on last Monday night against the Seahawks. So do you think they can keep rolling here against the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think that was a huge win for Dallas because this was going to be a tough spot, right? The Lions play Monday, but then they get an off week, so they get rest coming in. Pittsburgh is just a great matchup for Dallas, considering how banged up their defense is, how they're just not very good on offense, right? I mean, Justin Fields is a good story. I think he's improved a little bit since the Bears, but he's still a pretty flawed player, and their passing game is pretty limited. So to me, it was kind of a get. If you can throw 2 interceptions, fumble the ball as a quarterback, and have a field goal blocked on the road against, a team that's viewed as a playoff team and still win, that's pretty nuts. And you can only do that against teams that have some serious issues. The Lions, the defense we saw against Seattle was obviously awful. I mean, it was really, really bad. Now, it can't just be because of Brian Branch. It has to be, their DBs just aren't playing that well. And one of them's a veteran, another guy they drafted high. But can Dallas exploit that? Like, Dallas isn't exactly scoring 35 points a game, right? They're pretty one-man dependent on CeeDee Lamb. I actually kind of like Ferguson. This new running back they got, Dawdle, it obviously ran really hard against Seattle, which was impressive.
Yeah.
But like that's what we're talking about. I mean, Zeke's runs about as fast as me. Brandon Cooks has been banged up. One thing that Dallas has, and I think, this has aged pretty well since he got fired with Aaron Rodgers, is like Mike McCarthy's shown to be his team's playoffs have been a problem. But over the last 3 regular seasons, there's a reason they win 12 games. And even this year, how could you have more? How many guys did they lose during that game? Right? They're losing games and they're already injured coming in. And it's like, if he still gets them to 10 wins, that's like him and Dak they're not elite. It's not exactly Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, but they're better than I think the way we talk about them sometimes.
A great regular season team. That's what I call the Dallas Cowboys. When you get to the playoffs, it's a completely different story.
Better than being a bad one, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're in the conversation. They get themselves into the dance, right? They give their fans something to cheer about for 4 months every season. So, it could be a lot worse than that. Okay, let's get into a couple of your best bets here. You have 3 of them. Let's start with the Broncos, who are absolutely buzzing right now. 3 straight wins, an ugly one in between 2 pretty impressive ones. That one in Tampa Bay a couple of weeks ago. That was really strong. They had their way with the Raiders. And, of course, we know what happened in New York against the Jets. They're taking on the Chargers. Coming off a bye, a little beat up, I guess, but you like Denver here as a 3-point underdog.
I think Denver's pretty good. I mean, I think their defense is that game against the Raiders. It's hard to, not that you don't get credit against the Jets, but in a game that is that wet, it's obviously you hold an opponent to 9 points, but you're like, it's this defense. And then you watch them against the Raiders, just, a nice day outside, and you see their team speed. Obviously, Surtain's a great player, but the rest of their DBs can really cover. And the Raiders do have skill guys. Their defensive pass rush looked really good. And they're not going to be able to score that much, but they're playing the Chargers, who kind of want to play just like them. To me, these teams, it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing right at each other. They kind of want to play the same. And Herbert's battled injuries at any moment, even if he's fully practiced all week. Like, that foot is not something that just gets better overnight. You just can't depend on some of their guys to get injured all the time. And I just think that, like, I would take any, like, regardless where this game was being played, it could be playing in LA or Denver, whoever is getting 3 points. Because I would expect, like, heading into the fourth quarter, 13-13. Yeah. And honestly, these teams, if Harbaugh's team was able to stay healthy, I think Denver's been relatively healthy, I think they would be basically the same. Both these 2 teams can make the playoffs. Good defense, play smart. Herbert's better than Bo Nix, obviously. So that would be an advantage. But I think Denver's defense might be better than the Chargers. And I think both these coaches are pretty similar, pretty damn good. Like, it's going to be hard to be critical. And there's a lot of haters over the last couple of years on Sean Payton. Yeah. If he wins like 10 games this year with a rookie quarterback who's not exactly throwing touchdowns every week, right?
What was it, 60 yards he threw for in that game against the Jets there? So, that defense.
Even the game against the Raiders, he looks better, but they are not depending on him by any means.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have another 3-point spread. I like the spot quite a bit. I think it's a good number. You like the Steelers here. They're favored by 3 points in Las Vegas versus the Raiders, who've had some awful losses on their home field here this season. Of course, the Panthers went in there with Andy Dalton a couple of weeks ago. They beat them by double digits. The Broncos beat them by double digits there last week. And when I see a spread like this, the Steelers, that game against the Cowboys went right down to the wire. If the Steelers win that game, they're probably favored by more than 3 points in this one. So I think you're getting decent value on them. Why do you like them at 3 points here?
Might be 5.5, right? If the DB just puts his hand out and blocks the ball and he doesn't catch it, and really nothing changed except 3 inches, right?
Yeah.
So I think the Raiders are terrible. And I think a lot like the Jets, I think you get people in positions that are over their heads. You got internal drama of Crosby claiming he wants to be there. He wishes Devontae good luck, or boy, it's just weird. And at the end of the day, they're just not very good. So you look at the Steelers. What would you guess? 80-20 Steeler Raider fans? Like, I mean, this is going to be a Steeler home game. That's a problem for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Is when they play these teams. And you play some of these Steelers, the Cowboys, the Packers that have a huge national base, you got no shot. And listen, this is what they signed up for. They knew it, and it's, I would say, been worse than we thought. Even though once you take a step back, you're like, of course, people love to go travel there and hang out. But this is, I could see this game being like 23-13. You know, it's not going to be pretty. I don't expect the Steelers to like beat them by 25 here, because they can't. That's not really the way they play. But this is a tough matchup for the Raiders.
Okay, last but not least, this looks like the sexiest game of the week. No one would have said this going into the season. Looking ahead, I'm talking about the Commanders as a 6.5-point underdog in Baltimore, taking on the Ravens, tied for the highest total of the week, 52.5. I might have to go over on that one. You like the underdog here to give them a game, John?
Yeah, I just think if you go with the logic of this Ravens team has struggled to play pass defense, right? And it's a major problem for them. Now, you're playing a rookie quarterback, and there's no guarantee that every single week he's going to look like Joe Burrow meets Lamar Jackson, and that's how he's looked. But this is a lot of points for a team that is playing really, really well and has a lot of confidence. And I think I would say I sent you these, and once the news came out, I like the Bills more. Like if I had to go all in on one of the two games, because ultimately rookie quarterback on the road, even though it's a very short trip. But I do think the plus 6.5, like if all of a sudden we look at the end of the season and the Commanders are an 11 or 12 win team, like they ain't getting 6.5 points in many games. Now, are the Ravens the second best team in the league, right behind the Chiefs? Might be. I do think it's hard, though, to be that when your defense looks like that. And I get you're playing Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, but 38 points in one half, especially the defense, like we have to acknowledge, I think they're still like one of the best run defenses in the league. Mm-hmm. But this is a passing league. Like most teams, of course, you're a good run defense. Look at the team that you play in practice every day. Like it's something, it probably comes natural to them. But the passing defense, like that is why do you lose to the Chiefs in these games? In the playoffs? Well, because 2 big drives that determine the game, Mahomes goes right down. Last week, they got very, very lucky to win that game. I mean, Joe Burrow looked like Joe Montana meets Peyton Manning meets Tom Brady. He was incredible. Yeah. So if this guy brings in all this mojo in, which he's playing like a young star, I just think that's a lot, right?
Yeah, maybe a bit of a letdown spot here for Baltimore off 2 big wins. Of course, they destroyed the Bills. And then that game versus the Bengals, they should have lost. They were down by double digits at 3 separate times in the second half of the game. And then the kicker missed the field goal for the Bengals. And we know what happened. The Ravens.
If this is last year's team, because remember last year's team had a couple moments like this. Like they played the Lions at home, who were like a team, the teams were killed them. Mm-hmm. And they just had a couple moments like that. And that's why they were the 1 seed and why, I was putting money on them to win the whole thing. And maybe they can get that mojo back and be back in that position. I think we'll learn a lot about them this week. I think we'll learn more about the Ravens than we will the Commanders because, again, they're still figuring stuff out. Rookie quarterback, a lot of new players. Yeah. But, like, are the Ravens for real? Because the Chiefs in this spot would handle business and make it look like they did last night. I think that everyone's kind of anointing Washington. It's not like you're playing – if they were playing the Carolina Panthers and this is like a 9-point, I'd be like, whatever. I could understand them not trying to win the game by a field goal. This one, this is an easy one to get up for, though, right, if you're the Ravens?
Yeah, good-looking game. We have seen Cliff Kingsbury fade, though, the longer a season goes, so it'll be interesting to see if that narrative kind of carries over into his new position as offensive coordinator here with the Commanders. So, yeah, can't wait for that one. That should be an absolute blast. John, we will leave it at that. Best of luck with all your bets here this weekend. Best of luck with all your content. We look forward to chatting with you again next Wednesday.
Talk to you soon.
All right, from one John to another John, back to the original Jon Metler. Time to talk a little NBA. We might set the record for the longest show in the history of Before You Bet here today, but we got a lot to discuss. Turning the page over to NBA. If you guys are still watching in the live chat, I see a bunch of you guys in there, both on YouTube and on X. Let us know, who are you taking in the NBA Finals? Who do you have beating who? Is the path there for the Boston Celtics? You think they get back in the West? You could probably make a good case for a handful of teams. But we're going to be discussing the Milwaukee Bucks and Dallas Mavericks today. We're doing these team betting previews. So let's start with the Milwaukee Bucks here in the Eastern Conference. They are 14-1 to win the NBA Finals, minus 120 to win the Central Division. Really? You don't think the Pistons are going to have a run at the division here this year? Win total of 50.5. They're coming off a 49-win season. Key additions, Gary Trent Jr. comes over from the Raptors, Taurean Prince as well. Key losses, Malik Beasley. I think he is on the Pistons, I believe. Patrick Beverley playing over in Israel, I think it is. And John's favorite Bucks fan-friendly bet is Giannis to lead the NBA in rebounds per game, 10-1. I don't mind that. So big picture view of the Milwaukee Bucks for me, this team's going to have more stability this year. John and I, we said it a dozen times last year. They made too many moves. They come in with a new coach. It doesn't go very well. So they bring in Doc Rivers. The team probably only had half a dozen practices with Doc Rivers all season, coming in right in the middle of the season. So very hard to adjust. The big trade too with Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday out, him in. I like the Bucks. I like Giannis. He's probably my favorite player in the league. He's still going to be elite for at least a handful more seasons, only 29 years old here. But I think we're asking a lot for this team to go on an NBA Finals run. You check out what happened to them at the end of last season, untimely injuries to both Giannis and Dame. They get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. Like, how disappointing was that? Then you look at the third best player, Chris Middleton. This guy misses a lot of time. He's only played 88 games the last two seasons. Then you kind of factor in the Doc Rivers playoff collapse stuff. I like this team. I would like to see them go on a run because I love Giannis. I think he's a great he represents the sport well. He's got a great story. But yeah, they're going to be in the mix, but I would put them easily behind the Celtics and the Knicks in the Eastern Conference. John, your big picture view of the Bucks here, and then we'll get you to break down that best bet for Giannis.
Yeah, the Bucks, you're talking about Chris Middleton. The Bucks, don't they feel like a team where they could go over their win total, have a really good season, or it could be like complete disaster? It does kind of feel like that, right? Like it just feels like they're at kind of like a breaking point with their roster. And Bradley Beal, I don't know if anyone saw it yesterday. I think he was out to ruin the team chemistry of the Milwaukee Bucks because he pointed out that last year when he was traded to the Phoenix Suns, the Milwaukee Bucks had a deal in place to bring him to Milwaukee, and Chris Middleton was going the other way. And he literally said in the interview, the Bucks probably aren't going to be happy that I'm sharing this. And I'm sure they're not, because Chris Middleton has been there for a long time. So now, like last year, you trade Drew Holiday, kind of break up that loyalty there. And now Chris Middleton, maybe he did or didn't know, he was in a deal for Bradley Beal last year, but Bradley Beal didn't want to go there. So that's kind of interesting right there. The thing is, there's so much talent on this team, like Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Even you look at them last year, before they fired their coach and moved on to Doc Rivers, they were first in the East. And their playoff run isn't really representative of the talent they have. Giannis Antetokounmpo didn't play. So it's kind of a really tricky team to like look at here. The Central odds minus 120. That's actually a pretty good price. I think they're like minus 180 at some other spots. That minus 120 is at BetMGM. I do think they're the best team in the Central. The Pacers they're a good team. They made the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think they're, a go win 55 games type of team. Cleveland Cavaliers, new coach, kind of some changes there. I think the Bucks have clearly the best talent. I'm just not sure. It's a weird vibe with this team. So that's kind of my stance with them. It's kind of, you kind of just want to see it play out. I did put them in that parlay. Like I said, I think they're kind of like a boom or bust spot right here for this year with them.
Yeah, Bobby Newport says a lot more competition from the Eastern Conference than previous years. Yeah, the Knicks are better. The Pacers very well could be back in the mix. No one ever expects anything from the Miami Heat, but they're usually there. if they're healthy. And yeah, stability is going to be the key for this team. If they get into the playoffs and both Dame and Giannis are 100% healthy, look out. I don't know if that's going to happen, because pretty much anytime Giannis is on the court, he is the best player on the court, right? So, he's still evolving as a player, just 29 years old. So that bet you had for Giannis to lead the NBA in rebounds per game, tell us why you like that bet.
Well, first off, I think I messed up the graphic there, and I didn't catch it when we submitted it, because it's actually it's 20-1, and I did find a 25-1 even after I submitted the graphic. So the 10-1 is actually the next bet. So we'll see if the 21 is on the next page. But it's 20. You can find a 25-1 on Giannis. What I'm kind of interested in. So like last year, Domantas Sabonis led the NBA in rebounding, 13.7 per game. Giannis has kind of been 11.5 per game the last 4 years here. He did average 13.6 5 years ago. So it is possible for him to get up to a number like you've seen it from him before, and he's trading at 25-1. The thing is that kind of catches my attention when you hear, ever since Doc Rivers has been with the Bucks, you've kind of heard rumors of trading Brook Lopez, moving on from Brook Lopez. And if Brook Lopez comes out, as the NBA shifts to like kind of a smaller, can we get away with rim protection from our smaller guys? And Giannis, you could, right? It is possible. Maybe they start playing Giannis at the 5. If Brook Lopez comes out, he's not that big of a rebounding guy, but I mean, he's a 7-footer, right? If he comes out, all of a sudden that 11.5 could start to trickle up to a much higher number where Giannis could lead the league in rebounding. Are they going to trade Brook Lopez? Are they going to, make that move? It's kind of weird, right? Center, blocks, led the league in block shots, plays good defense, shoots the 3-pointer, which is a big part of the game now. But you just constantly keep hearing this like rumor ever since Doc Rivers been there that they might move on from him. So I feel like in the NBA, when there's smoke, there's usually fire. So even if his minutes just go from like, say, 30 to like 23, 24, maybe they just want something different. Maybe they want to go a little small ball. That could help Giannis Antetokounmpo's rebounds go up. So that was kind of the angle I was looking at there.
Okay, let's go to the Western Conference and check out the Dallas Mavericks. An unlikely run to the NBA Finals last year. I think that's fair to say. They are 12-1 to win the NBA Finals this year. Plus 150 to win the division. A win total of 49.5, coming off a 50-win season. Key additions, big one, Klay Thompson. They also bring in Marshall, and Dinwiddie is back with them. They say goodbye to Tim Hardaway Jr., Jones Jr., and Josh Green. And Metler's favorite team-friendly bet is Luka to lead the NBA in assists per game. Now, was that one right? 10-1?
That was right. That's 10-1. So I must have put 10-1 on both of them.
Okay, there we go. So my big picture view of the Dallas Mavericks, I don't think this team has enough depth. It was a great season for them last year. They got really hot to end the regular season. The narrative on Kyrie Irving started to change quite a bit. So he's back in the good graces of some people, I guess you could say. They do bring in Klay Thompson, who's going to have a big chip on his shoulder. But and I think he might do better than people expect. But it's like what we saw in the NBA Finals last year. They did not have enough depth. And I would pick, at best, they're the 4th best team in the Western Conference. I think most people expected the winner of that Nuggets T-Wolves series to end up representing the West. And that was a really weird series. And then the T-Wolves just flat out ran out of steam. They lost that series in 5 games, you'll recall. And Dallas ends up getting through. So great season for them last year. I think it's going to be hard to repeat. Kind of crazy to believe here that Luka's still just 25 years old, though. Yeah. Like, he might not even be in his prime. So we'll see what kind of shape Luka is in coming into the season. Maybe they can make a move or two during the regular season to kind of add some depth. But, yeah, I mean, they'll be a player in the playoffs, but I don't expect them to get back to the NBA Finals this year. Your big picture view of the Mavericks, John, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'll answer the question there. Does Klay Thompson help them? I personally think no. I think that is kind of, he does and he doesn't. Here's my issue with the Mavericks. So when you look at how they're constructed last year, Derrick Jones Jr. was the guy, their point of attack defender who picked up the guards and, took on the hardest matchup every night. What they ran into in the NBA Finals was they needed more 3-point shooting. So Derrick Jones Jr. leaves, Klay Thompson comes in. Now you have a backcourt of Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, and Klay Thompson. Who's guarding the best team on the other, best player on the other team? Jason Kidd came out and said just recently that one of the 3 is going to have to step up and play defense. I don't know if that's going to work, especially in the NBA. And it's also one of those things like now, not only when you face them, you're not even, you're trying to get Derek Jones Jr. off your guy, get a switch, get Luka Doncic onto him, attack Luka Doncic. You don't even have to run actions. You can just attack whoever is right in front of you now. I think they're going to have a hard time figuring out that point of attack defense with those three guards. They would have been better off. I mean, everyone would have been better off with like a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but I think they needed someone who could guard the best player and knock down threes. They went and got the three-point shooter. Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, a big part of that run was Jason Kidd was able to get them to play defense in the playoffs. Can you do it for 82 games? And now you also took away your best perimeter defender. Najee Marshall is kind of the guy they added to bring in that defense, but he's not in the starting lineup. So then once again, it's kind of like it creates a confusing situation. Do you take out Klay Thompson for his defense? That kind of creates, Klay Thompson left Golden State because he wanted more minutes, right? So kind of interesting. The win total there, 49.5. Looks relatively low when you initially think about it from a team that went to the NBA Finals. But you like in the West and in their division is tough. Like even the worst team is the San Antonio Spurs. You got to go against Wembanyama. Houston Rockets are good. Pelicans are good. Grizzlies are going to be better. You play 4 games against your division. That 49.5 is to me a much bigger number than it kind of appears on the surface. So that I'm not a big fan of the Mavericks. I have made it clear pretty on here that I do like the Grizzlies in that division.
Yeah, you're going to have quite a few teams in the West on the come up. People are expecting big things from the Grizzlies. The Rockets are young and improving. The Spurs going in the right direction. I think that's fair to say. So, unlikely for the Mavs to get back here to the NBA Finals. But you like this bet on Luka here. Break this one down for us.
Yeah, so you look at Tyrese Haliburton led the league in assists last year, 10.9. Luka Doncic had a career 9.8 assists, so he's got to get up one more. The one thing I do like about this, which you didn't see last year, is, Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford lob threats, alley-oops, ton of assists. It really helps Luka Doncic. At the beginning of the year, Gafford wasn't there. And at the beginning of the year, Derek Lively was also in and out, rookie, injured. He had some injury stuff. Dwight Powell spent time as the center. So when you go a full season now, both of those guys and it doesn't matter who's playing. And even if one sits out, you have the other. That really, really helps an assist prop. And while Klay Thompson doesn't help Doncic's, like the defense on the Mavericks, catch and shoot 3 guy, and you look at Tyrese Haliburton and how he did it last year, a lot of his big assist game came early in the year when he had Buddy Hield. Then Buddy Hield moved on. The assist numbers kind of dropped because Andrew Nembhard got put into the lineup, and he's more of a guy who, creates and stuff. So that catch and shoot also helps the assist prop. So I think Doncic is set up in a really, really good spot where you have a lob threats who rely on you to create offense, and you have a catch and shoot shooter now in Klay Thompson who also rely on you to create for him, and the assists could get up pretty high there. So I think he has a chance, 10-1. He's not the favorite, but I think he has a chance to get up over into a number where he could be in contention for this.
Watch out for LaMelo Ball. Went off last night in the preseason. That is sarcasm. Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, he did have a good game, but it's LaMelo. You're not going to see LaMelo Ball have a good game in a big game anytime too soon, right? Steph's a stat sheet, very talented. Maybe not that smart of a fella though. T. Lee says, just give the Pels a single home playoff win, and I'll be happy. Is Zion going to be healthy come playoffs here? Brandon Ingram, is he going to be on the team? They weren't able to figure out a trade for him. Yeah, the Pelicans could be a little sneaky, though. I think they'll be a pretty good regular season team, at least with Murray joining the lineup there. They'll be fun to watch for sure. Okay, so we went 1 hour, 3 minutes today. Let's recap these picks that we did a very long time ago. I'll do mine first. Alex Cobb, I like him to have under 1.5 earned runs, kind of based on the idea. I don't expect him to be out there for much longer than 3 innings here today. Jose Quintana, who's absolutely on fire, under 2.5 earned runs for him. Bobby Witt Jr., over 1.5 total bases. And Dodgers team total. Show some balls. Have some guts, Dodgers. It's all about your offense here tonight. You're paying these guys $1 zillion. Over 3.5 runs scored for the Dodgers team total. John, would you like to break down your home run props here, please?
Parker Meadows to hit home run plus 1,000. Francisco Lindor plus 475 to hit a home run. And last but not least, Jurickson Profar to hit home run plus 750.
Profar did not make the graphic. I was out at Canadian Tire. I tweeted this out last night, getting my skate sharpened, and I look up and there's this baseball like pitching practice thing for kids with Walker Buehler on the cover of it. Up here in the east coast of Canada, it's pretty random that Walker Buehler's on this thing and just happened to be pitching. I just happened to place that bet on him yesterday too, and I think maybe it's a sign. And at first he gets lit up, but he ends up cashing the bet. So maybe it was a sign that something was going to happen. So hopefully we get to see Walker Buehler again this season, because I would like to see the Dodgers, get through here, but we shall see. So yeah, big show coming up tomorrow, Thursday Night Football. We're right back at it with the NFL. We're going to be covering whatever we're going to see here in Major League Baseball. Jake Butt will be by to talk college football, a little bit of NFL there as well. Jon Metler is going to be back with us next Tuesday and Wednesday, breaking down more of these teams. 2 weeks
13
from
days.
Yeah, we're how many days out are we from the season opener?
13 days. We start.
13 days. Then John's going to be on the show every single day here, giving out his best bets. He did over 50 units last season in the regular season?
Just over 60.
Just over 60, yeah. So you're not going to want to miss that. We're going to be all over the NBA, just like we are all over the NFL, Major League Baseball, college football. Make sure you are subscribed to the Covers YouTube channel here. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Thank you to both of my guests for joining. Thank you to producer Mick for producing a long show today. Thank you to BetMGM for sponsoring. Guys, best of luck with your bets today and tonight. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Woo!